Hello, it's Dr. Narnese, and welcome back into another episode. Hey, first of all, I wanted to just call out the death of Malcolm Jamal Warner. Most of us knew him as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. Obviously, he had other roles, but um, I was already thinking about doing a video on the Black Elite. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of videos out here about the Black Elite since people have been watching The Gilded Age, right, on HBO Max and watching the character Peggy Scott and now Felicia Rashad is on the show. It's a lot of conversation happening about the Black Elite. And as we reflect on the life or the career rather of Malcolm Jamal Warner and his role as Theo Huxtable, I'm wondering how many of y'all remember, if you're old enough to remember when the Cosby Show first really got to be popular. And there were a lot of Black people who were like, "Oh, this isn't real." They're a doctor and a lawyer, and they live in this brownstone, and they have this money and this perfect life. And there was a bit of a backlash back in the day, early in the show's arrival on the scene. And it was like, okay, we're not allowed to talk about Black people doing well. It was an interesting moment, right? And some of y'all will remember. I'm Generation X. Who else with me? Generation X. I remember that. Um, and so when I was thinking about his death, Malcolm Jamal Warner's death, I was like, I was already going to do this video about the Black Elite, and then I remembered that about the Cosby Show and the critique against the Cosby Show back then. And then it got me to thinking, because I always do. I'm always connecting the dots. I'm a historian essentially, and so essentially, I want to talk about the Black Elite and class and culture and racial uplift. And the historical dots that I think a lot of people miss. People just don't really realize that there were Black communities, who were free. There were free communities of color, right, all the way back to the beginning of the American enterprise, when America first, at least coming out of the Civil War, at the very least coming out of the Civil War, but certainly even during slavery, there were free Black communities. And so after the Civil War, you get into the Reconstruction period, the late 19th century, the late 1800s, which is where the Gilded Age takes place, right? And you have these families that are very wealthy, and they are, living into the idea of what we now call respectability politics. And that has become very unpopular in our time, but we're very privileged. We don't necessarily think that we are, but we're very privileged to even say, well, I don't want to participate in, respectability politics anymore. The idea around respectability politics was to be your best and do your best. And that would mean that white people then had to accept us in their neighborhoods and in their businesses and their schools, etc. Of course, it's highly problematic, because why should we have to work that hard to be accepted as humans? But enter racism and white supremacy. And so the idea was, in order to get out from under white supremacy and these Jim Crow laws and all of that, that Black people were to do our best, to be the best, to always, excel, dress well, do everything you could to make yourself seem almost white, right? Like white people, do what they do. And you know, it is what it is in terms of being problematic, but I think you can understand why that would have been the idea, right? To get out from underneath this oppressive force called white supremacy, get out to sort of exclude oneself, to protect oneself and one's own family from the oppression of Jim Crow and segregation, right? To keep yourself safe, you're going to try to fit in and to do well. So we had a whole community of Black doctors and lawyers and teachers and all of that. And you also had, at this period, right, you had Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, who were what used to be called race men, right? At the time, race men meant activists. And so Booker T. Washington, you might recall, is the person who went on to found Tuskegee University, and he definitely was someone who said that vocational education is the way, right? How are we going to uplift the masses of Black people who are just recently out of slavery? Vocational education and respectability politics, right? He had to go hat in hand getting money from white people to help him build this school. And so we can't really hate on him, although people try to, because he built something like Tuskegee, right? And he gave Black people education, and so that they could have skills and trade. They already had skills, but to build a business around their own trade. His saying was, work hard, be excellent, and show white America that we deserve equality. Work hard, be excellent, and show white America that we deserve equality. Well, W.B. Du Bois, who was already well elite, right? Already a Harvard grad, right? First Black person to get a PhD from Harvard University, came along and said, no, we need an elite class of educated Black people. We don't need any more people who are agricultural or who are, just in the trades. We need an elite class, college educated Black people, if we're going to really uplift. And so we get this stratification about class, right? Both men were talking about class, right? Where are we going to be in the fallout of class? Where do you want to position yourself? And we are looking at that still. I mean, we still have issues of class, right? We talk about some people or communities which are ghetto, some people who are ratchet, some people who are bougie. We still are dealing with these issues, right? We still are dealing. And when the Cosby Show came out, the fact that, what was that, the late 80s, mid to late 80s, mid 80s, I think, right? And the fact that it would come up then as well lets us know that we as the Black community are still dealing with this idea about class and culture and racial uplift. Because for a lot of Black people, they looked at that, this lawyer and doctor together with these kids, and they obviously are living well. That triggered a lot of Black people. So we're still dealing with class. The other historical piece I wanted to bring in are the Black women's clubs, and a lot of times these people get left out, like Mary Church Terrell, Mary McLeod Bethune, which went on to found Bethune-Cookman, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but because her name is associated with it. But many people forget about the women, right? And these Black women's clubs did a lot in terms of building schools and hospitals and libraries, giving their service, giving their time. And again, you see this in the Gilded Age, the TV show, because what was really appropriate work for women, high class women? What could you do? Social status, right? You are not going to be a shop girl, right? You are really, your role is to be in the home, to make a perfect home, raise perfect children, be a good Christian. But if you're going to do some work, then you need to volunteer, right, at the church or at a school. Like, you're going to volunteer, and it's about social uplift, right? And so those women had time on their hands and they had resources. So they helped to build schools, hospitals, libraries. You can look up Mary Church Terrell and our organization, the National Association of Colored Women, National Association of Colored Women. And their motto was lifting as we climb, right? We climb socially. We are climbing, lifting as we climb, but it's our responsibility to bring up others, right? And so today we still are dealing with lifting as we climb, right? Don't we always say, well, how come Black people who do well, they leave the community and they take their money out of the community, and that's why our community stays so economically depressed, because the people with the money left the community. Again, we're never done with class issues. We're never done with colorism either. So you see that in the show too. You see that about colorism. The lighter you are, the easier it is for you to progress upwardly in society, right? So again, it just kind of feels right to, it felt right to me, because I was already thinking about doing something on the Black elite. And then Malcolm Jamal Warner passed away, and I was just reflecting on the Cosby Show and how it spoke to class, or how it brought this conversation about class to the forefront again. And when you know it, in the Gilded Age, we were looking at Felicia Rashad in a role, right? She's very status conscious and very much about keeping one's, reputation up, right? Social climbing, right? Respectability politics. So here's Felicia Rashad, kind of, I won't say in a similar role, but I will say raising similar questions again. And so, they represented the Huxtables represented the black elite on TV in the 80s. So anyway, what else did I want to say here? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the black elite. Are you watching the Gilded Age? I don't watch it. I haven't kept up all the way through, but I'm watching it again in this season because I want to see what they do with the black elite. And let me know. Do you remember all that about the Cosby Show? Well, drop a comment. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, culture, history, storytelling, all that kind of good stuff. Y'all know that I love this kind of stuff, and I would love to hear what you are thinking, especially about how, I don't know, class is showing up even now. All right, bye for now.